A man walks through his Victorian mansion one final morning, checking each room methodically. His wife sleeps upstairs. His 3 children will arrive home from school soon. His elderly mother sits in her 3rd-floor apartment. By sunset, all 5 will be dead by his hand, and he'll vanish into America for 18 years. But this isn't a random act of violence. John List believes he's performing an act of salvation, murdering his family to save their souls from poverty and sin. Before we dive into this story, please like, subscribe, and let us know where you're watching from. November 9th, 1971, Westfield, New Jersey. Helen List wakes in her bedroom at 431 Hillside Avenue, a 19-room mansion her husband can no longer afford. The heating bills alone consume half their income. John promised her comfort, security, a life befitting their status. Instead, their bank accounts are empty. He's been lying about having a job for months. She calls his name. No answer. The house sits silent around her, too big, too cold, too expensive. The mortgage is 3 months overdue. Foreclosure looms. John appears in the doorway. In his hand, a 9mm pistol he bought specifically for this morning. Helen sees it. Her eyes widen. She opens her mouth to scream. The gunshot echoes through the empty mansion. Helen collapses on her bed, blood soaking into the expensive sheets they can't afford. John stands over her body, checking her pulse with the same methodical precision he applied to his accounting work. Dead. The first of 5. He drags her body to the ballroom downstairs and arranges it carefully on a sleeping bag. He wants them all together, a family, even in death. In her 3rd-floor apartment, John's 85-year-old mother Alma hears nothing. Her hearing faded years ago. She sits in her chair, waiting for her morning coffee. John climbs the stairs. She smiles when she sees him. He raises the pistol. The smile freezes. 1 shot to the head. Alma dies without understanding why. He drags her frail body down 2 flights of stairs. His back aches. Sweat soaks through his shirt despite the cold house. He lays Alma beside Helen in the ballroom. 2 down. 3 to go. The yellow school bus stops at the corner at 3:15. 16-year-old Patricia List walks up the driveway alone. She's the first child home. John waits in the kitchen listening to her footsteps. She calls out, "Dad?" Her voice echoes through the mansion. He shoots her in the hallway. Patricia falls, her schoolbook scattering across the floor. She's still alive, moaning, trying to crawl. John fires again, and again. He needs to be certain. He needs them saved. He drags her body to the ballroom, places her beside her mother and grandmother. The sleeping bags are soaked red now. He returns to clean the blood in the hallway. Everything must be orderly, controlled, right. At 4 o'clock, 13-year-old Frederick and 15-year-old John Jr. arrive home together, arguing about football. Their voices carry through the house. John waits until they separate. Frederick heads to the kitchen for a snack. He shoots him in the back of the head. The boy dies instantly, face down on the linoleum floor his mother mopped yesterday. John Jr. hears the shot. He runs toward the sound. "Dad! Dad, what happened?" John meets him in the hallway, raises the pistol. His son's face registers confusion, then terror, then nothing. The bullet enters his chest. John Jr. stumbles backward, hits the wall, slides down. His father stands over him and fires twice more. 4 bodies in the ballroom now. John arranges them side by side, their heads on pillows. He folds their hands. From a distance, they could be sleeping. He cuts the electricity to slow decomposition, turns on the radio in the ballroom to hymns playing softly, leaves lights on throughout the house so neighbors think the family's still home. In the kitchen, John makes himself a sandwich. He eats slowly, methodically, washing his plate and putting it away. He writes a letter to his pastor, explaining everything: the financial ruin, the shame, his wife's syphilis from a previous marriage, his daughter's interest in drama, which he considered sinful, his sons growing rebellious. He was saving them from a life of poverty and sin, sending them to heaven while they were still pure, giving them eternal salvation through death. I know that many will only look at the additional years that they could have lived, but if finally they were no longer Christians, what would be gained? John writes in his careful accountant's script. He signs the letter, seals it, places it on his desk beside letters canceling the milk delivery, the newspaper subscription, the utilities. Everything must be in order. John packs one suitcase, takes $2,000 in cash from their dwindling savings. At 11 p.m., he walks through the mansion one final time. 5 bodies cooling in the ballroom, blood cleaned from the floors, lights glowing in every window, hymns playing softly on the radio. He climbs into his Chevrolet Impala and drives away from 431 Hillside Avenue, away from his name, away from his failure, into America's vastness where a man can disappear. A month passes before anyone checks the house. The hymns still play on the radio, the same songs looping endlessly. The bodies lie in the ballroom, partially mummified by the cold. Neighbors noticed the lights always on, the mail piling up, but assumed the lists went on vacation. In wealthy Westfield, you don't pry. The police discover the scene on December 7th. 5 bodies, 1 missing family member. John List has vanished completely. The FBI launches a manhunt nationwide. John's photo appears in post offices, police stations, newspapers across America. Tips flood in from every state. John List is spotted in California, Texas, Florida, Michigan. Every lead goes cold. He's become a ghost. What the authorities don't know is that John List is living in Denver, Colorado under the name Robert Clark. He's taken a job as an accountant. He attends church every Sunday. Within a year, he remarries. His new wife knows nothing of his past, nothing of the 5 bodies in the ballroom. He's reinvented himself completely. The same methodical precision he applied to murder now applied to disappearing. 18 years pass. John List, now Robert Clark, lives quietly in Richmond, Virginia. He's 63 years old, remarried, respected in his community. He attends church, he files taxes. He's invisible in his normalcy. The case grows cold, relegated to dusty file boxes and the memories of aging detectives. The List murders become a cautionary tale told in criminology classes. The Victorian mansion at 431 Hillside Avenue burns down in 1972. Some say arson, some say haunted. The lot remains empty. Then in 1989, the television show America's Most Wanted features the List case. They hire a forensic sculptor to create a bust showing what John List might look like after 18 years. The sculptor adds weight, wrinkles, age spots, receding hairline. He studies List's bone structure, his German heritage, his lifestyle. The bust airs on national television. Within days, hundreds of calls flood in. But one caller from Richmond, Virginia insists with absolute certainty, "That's my neighbor, Bob Clark." FBI agents knock on Robert Clark's door on June 1, 1989. The man who answers matches the forensic bust almost perfectly. His face drains of color when they say the name John List. "He think you have the wrong person," he says quietly, but his hands shake as he says it. They fingerprint him at the local police station. The prints match John Emil List, wanted for 5 counts of murder. 18 years of freedom ends in a small room with fluorescent lights and a federal agent reading him his rights. At trial, John List shows no remorse. He sits straight-backed, emotionless, as prosecutors detail the murders. His daughter shot multiple times, his sons executed, his elderly mother dragged down 2 flights of stairs, his wife killed in her sleep. "I grew up with the concept that you could go to heaven or hell. If they were killed, they would be sure of going to heaven.
If things had gone on, they might have fallen away from the church." The courtroom sits in stunned silence. John List murdered his family to save their souls, destroyed 5 lives because his own failure was too shameful to face, chose death over poverty, violence over humiliation. The jury deliberates for 7 hours. They return with guilty verdicts on all 5 counts of first-degree murder. The judge sentences John List to 5 consecutive life terms, no possibility of parole. He'll die in prison. The problem with people like John List, the prosecutor tells reporters afterward, is they can justify anything. Murder becomes mercy in their twisted logic. Control becomes love. And their selfishness, their inability to face their own failures gets dressed up as salvation. John List serves 29 years in Trenton State Prison. He never expresses remorse, never apologizes to the families destroyed by his actions, never acknowledges that his children deserve to live, to grow up, to make their own choices about faith and sin and salvation. He dies of pneumonia on March 21, 2008, age 82. His victims never aged past 85, 46, 16, 15, and 13. The forensic sculptor who created the bust that caught John List keeps it in his studio. It serves as a reminder that time and distance don't erase guilt, that monsters hide in plain sight in accounting offices and church pews and quiet neighborhoods, that evil doesn't always look like evil. Sometimes it looks like a careful, methodical man who believes his own lies. Never confuse control with love or fear with faith, the sculptor often says. John List controlled his family so completely he killed them rather than let them witness his failure, and he called it salvation. If this story moved you, share it. Subscribe for more stories where justice, no matter how delayed, eventually arrives. Remember, righteousness requires humility. True faith trusts others to find their own path. And salvation never, ever comes through violence.